Welcome back to All Things Lord of the Rings. I am your host Alex, also known as Solanus Dracone. Last week, the elves took a big loss. Fingon was murdered and the lands of Hithlum had fallen to savages. The sons of Fëanor were scattered to the wind, and most of Beleriand was taken over. Morgoth took Hurin captive, cursed him and his family, and sat him on a chair on top of Thangorodrim to watch it all unfold. As we zoomed out to cover the topic of Nernaeth Arnoediad, we're going to zoom back in and talk about Turin Turambar, the son of Hurin. Mind you, there's a hell of a lot more to this story than I'm going to cover in this sitting, or even in my telling from the Silmarillion. There's a whole other book about this guy and his family. It's called The Children of Hurin, and it goes into much greater detail about the story. I might even get to that at some point on the channel. Maybe. Our story begins at about the time that Hurin was captured. The book makes it a point to mention that Rian, who was Huor's wife, didn't take the news of her husband's death very well. She was still preggers when she got the news, and when she heard, she fled into the wild. The Grey Elves of Mithrim took her in, but after she gave birth to her son Tuor, she went to Howd en Nernaeth and just lay down and died, leaving Tuor to be fostered by the elves. The chapter's not about her or him, but Tuor is important, and we should know about how he came into the world. Hurin's wife was named Morwen. She gave birth to her son Turin about 8 years ago, the same year Beren met Luthien. She also had a daughter named Lalaith, which means laughter. Sadly, Lalaith died at age 3 of some Angband pestilence. Morwen was preggers again during Nernaeth Arnoediad, however, so that's nice. Unfortunately, they all lived in Hithlum, which was a very bad place to live if you were human or elf at that time. After the battle, the Easterlings came in to subjugate the people of that land, and this is the atmosphere that Tuor grew up in, and Morwen had to raise her children. Now, the Easterlings were actually afraid of Morwen, and they didn't bother her much. But she knew in her heart that they would come to take the boy away. So, figuring that since she was related to Beren, who was also good friends with Hurin, Thingol might take her son in and protect him. She sent him along with 2 old servants of hers, telling them to somehow get into Doriath. Little did she know what kind of drama her son would get caught up in. Sometime after Turin left, she gave birth to her second daughter and named the girl Nienor, which means mourning. Turin and the old men made it to Doriath unharmed, greeted by none other than Beleg Strongbow himself, and Beleg took the boy into Menegroth to introduce him. Thingol, somewhat surprisingly, took the boy in and raised him, having become somewhat sympathetic by this point to the humans who had helped the elves. He sent a message north to Morwen to try to convince her to come along too, but because of pride and sentiment or whatever, she refused to leave the house that she and Hurin had lived in. She did, however, send back a family heirloom with them, the dragon helm of Dorlomin. Turin grew up pretty well in Doriath, kind of sad, but over time he did brighten up a bit. The messengers had regularly managed to get in and out of Hithlum to tell him how his mom and new sister were doing. But unfortunately, after 9 years of that, the messengers stopped being able to come back, and Thingol would send no more. Turin, about age 17 by this point, didn't like the fact that he couldn't get any more news about his family, so he went before Thingol, asked for and received some arms and armor, including the dragon helm, and went out into battle. 3 years later, making him 20 by this point, he had earned some recognition for himself as Beleg's brother in arms. But when he returned to Menegroth, he didn't exactly return in style. As you can imagine, several years of hard fighting would make anyone pretty trail-worn. There was an elf in the council of Thingol named Saros. Saros was a hater, and never liked the fact that Turin had been honored by Thingol when he was fostered. So he slung some shade at Turin, saying, "If the men of Hithlum look this rough, I gotta wonder what the women are like. Do they run around like deer, wearing only their hair?" Well, this pissed Turin right the hell off, so he grabbed up a big-ass goblet and chucked it at Saros, injuring the hater. That wasn't the end of it, though. No. The very next day, Saros tried to jump Turin in the woods. Turin fucked him up and then stripped off all the elf's clothes and sent him to go run around naked. Saros was so afraid that he accidentally fell to his death while running away. Now, there were witnesses, and Mablung, who was one of the guys from Nargothrond that Caranthir the shit-talker first talked shit at, asked Turin to come along to the king and beg his forgiveness. Turin kind of freaked out. He refused to come back, fearing he'd be viewed as an outlaw and held prisoner. So he turned tail and ran, past the girdle of Melian, and into the forest west of the river Sirion. There he joined up with a band of whatever remnants of desperate homeless men were left in that area, and they all basically acted like raiders, roughing up anyone and everyone they came across, orc, human, or elf. Turin became the captain of these outlaws, and named himself Nathion, the Wronged. Back in Menegroth, Thingol found out the whole truth about what had happened with Saros, and officially pardoned Turin. But Turin was nowhere to be found. This made Thingol unhappy, because he actually did love the boy. Possibly being childless since Luthien died and left, he saw some way to make fatherly amends. Anyhow, he couldn't stand the idea that anyone would think that Turin was chased out, and Beleg volunteered to go find him, because he and Turin were bros too. So Beleg set forth to try and find Turin. Before we go, I want to ask for your attention on something very important to me. YouTube has changed its monetization policy so that any channel with fewer than 1,000 subscribers or less than 4,000 hours of watch time within a 12-month period will have their monetization disabled. I am not at 1,000 subscribers, and I imagine I would need that many to be able to meet the 4,000 hours per 12-month period. So now, more than ever, please subscribe to my channel, place a like or leave a comment so that I get put higher up the rankings, or even share me with other friends you have who might be interested in Lord of the Rings lore. I will definitely be losing my monetization on February 20th, 2018, and I am consigned to that fact, as it would frankly take a miracle for me to break that barrier within the deadline. I don't expect that miracle of you. If you like my content, but haven't subscribed, please do so. Even if you don't want to contribute money, help me still be able to even make the chump change that the advertising revenue gives me. I still do it for the love, I won't stop doing it, but I feel like I deserve to get a slice of the money that YouTube is making off of me. Once again, I am Alex, also known as Solanus Dracone, and this has been All Things Lord of the Rings. Goodbye.